In the opulent dining room of a sprawling Manhattan penthouse, the air was thick with the scent of aged whiskey and unspoken tensions. It was a balmy summer evening in August 2025, the kind where the city's skyline twinkled like a promise of endless possibilities, but inside, the atmosphere crackled with impending storm. Victoria Harrington, the pregnant wife of tech millionaire Alexander, Alex, Beaumont, sat at the head of the mahogany table, her hand gently cradling the swell of her belly. At 32 weeks along, she was a vision of quiet elegance, her auburn hair cascading in soft waves, her emerald dress hugging her figure with a grace that belied the exhaustion she felt from the long day. Alex, her husband of 5 years, had insisted on this family dinner, though the word family felt like a cruel joke tonight. Seated to her right was Elena Voss, the 28-year-old social media influencer who had slithered into their lives like a serpent in silk, her lithe form draped in a scandalously low-cut red gown that screamed for attention. Alex Beaumont was no ordinary man. At 45, he had built a fortune from the ground up, founding Beaumont Tech, a company that revolutionized AI-driven financial algorithms. His net worth hovered around the $500 million mark, splashed across Forbes lists and tabloid headlines. But wealth had its pitfalls, and one of them was boredom. Victoria had noticed the changes over the past year: late nights at the office that stretched into dawns, cryptic texts on his phone, and a sudden interest in art galleries where he networked. She had confronted him months ago, but Alex, ever the charmer, had dismissed it as paranoia, sealing the argument with a lavish trip to Paris. Yet here they were, in their 5,000 square foot home overlooking Central Park, with Elena as the uninvited guest. Alex had met her at a gala 6 months prior, and what started as flirtation had escalated into something more insidious. Elena wasn't just a fling, she was a statement, a trophy of youth and audacity that Alex paraded to assert his dominance. The dinner had begun civilly enough. The chef, a Michelin-starred import from Paris, had prepared a feast: seared foie gras, truffle-infused risotto, and a rack of lamb that melted like butter. Victoria picked at her food, her appetite dulled by the Braxton Hicks contractions that had plagued her all week. She was a lawyer by trade, sharp and resilient, having climbed the ranks at a top firm before maternity leave forced her hand. But tonight, she felt vulnerable, her body a vessel for the life they both wanted, a son, they had learned at the ultrasound, to carry on the Beaumont legacy. Alex, across from her, swirled his scotch, his salt and pepper hair perfectly coiffed, his tailored suit accentuating his athletic build from daily sessions with a personal trainer. Elena, meanwhile, dominated the conversation, her laughter like tinkling glass, recounting tales of her latest photoshoot in the Maldives. "Darling, you simply must come next time," she purred, her eyes locking onto Alex's with a possessiveness that made Victoria's stomach churn. As the main course plates were cleared, the tension simmered to a boil. Victoria, ever the diplomat, had tried to steer the evening toward neutral ground. "Alex, how's the new project going? The one with the quantum computing tie-in?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. Alex nodded absently, his gaze drifting to Elena. "Oh, it's groundbreaking, Vic. Elena here has some brilliant ideas on branding, she's a natural." Elena beamed, leaning forward to place her hand on Alex's arm, her manicured nails grazing his sleeve. It was a small gesture, but to Victoria, it was a declaration of war. She felt a flush of heat rise to her cheeks, the room suddenly too warm, too confined. "Elena, I appreciate your enthusiasm," Victoria said coolly, "but perhaps we can keep the discussion professional." Elena's smile faltered for a split second, replaced by a flash of something darker: resentment, perhaps, or jealousy of the life Victoria represented. The argument ignited over dessert. The chef had wheeled in a towering chocolate torte, adorned with gold leaf and fresh berries, but no one touched it. Alex, emboldened by his third glass of scotch, made a fatal slip. "Victoria, you're being so uptight tonight. Loosen up, it's not like you're the only woman in my life anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke, Elena's lips curling into a triumphant smirk. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate, her eyes widening in disbelief. What did you just say? She whispered, her hand instinctively protecting her belly. Alex chuckled, waving it off. Come on, Vic, you knew this was coming. Elena and I were real. Passionate. Not like this routine we've fallen into. Elena, sensing her moment, stood up slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she circled the table like a predator. Poor thing, she cooed, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Pregnancy must be so burdensome. Carrying his child when you can't even keep him satisfied. Victoria rose unsteadily, gripping the back of her chair for support. Get out, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Both of you. This is my home. Alex laughed outright, a deep, booming sound that echoed off the crystal chandelier. Your home. I paid for it, Vic. Sit down. But Elena wasn't one to back down. Fueled by the power dynamic she had inserted herself into, she sauntered closer to Victoria, her eyes gleaming with malice. You think you're so superior, don't you? The perfect wife, the mother-to-be. But look at you, swollen, tired, irrelevant. In a surge of unbridled rage, Elena lashed out with her stiletto-clad foot, kicking the leg of Victoria's chair with vicious force. The antique oak piece toppled sideways, sending Victoria sprawling to the floor in a heap of silken shock. She cried out as she hit the ground, her arms wrapping around her abdomen, a sharp pain shooting through her side. The baby kicked furiously inside her, as if sensing the chaos. Alex's laughter erupted again, louder this time, a guttural roar that filled the room. He slapped his knee, tears of mirth streaming down his face. Oh, that's priceless. Look at her, Elena, down for the count. He doubled over, oblivious to the horror unfolding, his millionaire ego inflating with every chuckle. Elena joined in, her giggles high-pitched and cruel, standing over Victoria like a conqueror. But Victoria, gasping for breath, fumbled for her phone from her pocket. Her fingers, shaking, dialed 911. Help! My wife has been assaulted. She's pregnant, she managed to the operator, her voice breaking. The dispatcher urged calm, promising help was on the way. Minutes stretched into eternity as Victoria lay there, the cold floor seeping through her dress, her mind racing with fear for the baby. Alex's laughter began to falter as the reality sank in, but it was too late. The doorman buzzed up, and soon the elevator dinged, revealing two uniformed officers from the NYPD. They burst into the dining room, badges flashing, hands on holsters. Hands up. What's going on here? The lead officer barked. Victoria pointed weakly at Elena. She kicked my chair. I'm pregnant, it was assault. The officers assessed the scene. The overturned chair, Victoria's disheveled state, the scent of alcohol heavy in the air. Elena's face drained of color, her bravado crumbling. It was an accident. I didn't mean, but the officer cuffed her swiftly, reading her rights as Alex's. Laughter died in his throat, replaced by a look of stunned silence. As Elena was led away in handcuffs, her red gown now rumpled and tear-streaked, Alex finally realized the gravity. Officers, this is a misunderstanding. I'm Alexander Beaumont, I can explain. But the law didn't bend for millionaires in moments like this. Victoria was helped to her feet, an ambulance called for precaution. The penthouse, once a symbol of their gilded life, now echoed with the clank of handcuffs and the wail of sirens approaching below. Elena's arrest for assault would make headlines by morning, her influencer empire crumbling under the weight of felony charges, especially given the victim's pregnancy. Alex, his laughter a distant memory, faced the unraveling of his world, divorce papers looming, custody battles ahead. Victoria, though battered, felt a spark of resolve ignite within her. In the chaos of that night, the mistress's kick had toppled more than a chair, it had shattered illusions, exposing the fragility of power built on betrayal. The incident rippled outward like a stone in a pond. News vans gathered outside the building by dawn, reporters clamoring for details on the Millionaire's mistress assault. Social media exploded, with hashtag Beaumont scandal trending worldwide. Elena's followers, once adoring, turned vicious, doxing her and calling for justice. Alex's board at Beaumont Tech convened an emergency meeting, his reputation as a family man, a key selling point for investors, now in tatters. Victoria, monitored overnight at Mount Sinai Hospital, was cleared of any fetal distress, but the emotional scars ran deep. She filed for divorce the next day, her lawyer citing irreconcilable differences and emotional abuse. Elena, arraigned in court, faced up to 7 years if convicted, her bail set at $100,000, which Alex hesitantly posted before the optics forced him to back out. In the weeks that followed, the story became a cautionary tale of hubris and infidelity. Victoria emerged stronger, channeling her energy into advocacy for domestic violence survivors, her pregnancy a beacon of hope amid the wreckage. Alex, stripped of his laughter, retreated to his Hamptons estate, his fortune intact but his soul hollow. And Elena. She learned the hard way that kicking over a chair could kickstart the end of everything she thought she had won. The penthouse dinner, meant to be a celebration, had instead become the pivot point where privilege met consequence, and no amount of millions could buy back the moment the chair fell. Word count. 10:28. The dim glow of the chandelier cast long shadows across the opulent ballroom of the Grand Regency Hotel, where the elite of the city had gathered for the annual philanthropy gala. Crystal glasses clinked like whispers of secrets, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and unspoken rivalries. At the center of it all sat Elena Hargrove, her swollen belly a gentle mound beneath the flowing silk of her emerald gown. 8 months pregnant with her second child, she radiated a quiet elegance, her hand resting protectively on her abdomen as she chatted with a group of fellow patrons about the upcoming auction for children's charities. Her husband, Victor Hargrove, the self-made millionaire whose tech empire had skyrocketed him to fortune, was by her side, his arm draped casually around her chair, a picture of domestic bliss amid the glittering crowd. But bliss was a fragile illusion. Victor's eyes kept darting toward the far end of the room, where Isabella Voss held court like a queen in exile. Tall, raven-haired, and dressed in a crimson sheath that hugged her curves like a second skin, Isabella was Victor's mistress, a fact that Elena had suspected for months but never confronted. Whispers had circulated through their social circle, late-night meetings disguised as business dinners, lavish gifts that appeared without explanation, and Victor's sudden, work trips, that left Elena alone in their sprawling mansion. Tonight, however, the tension simmered to a boil. Isabella, emboldened by a few too many flutes of champagne, had decided it was time to stake her claim publicly. Why hide in the shadows when she could eclipse the wife entirely? As the orchestra struck up a waltz, Isabella sauntered across the polished marble floor, her high heels clicking like the ticking of a bomb. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing the drama unfolding. Elena, mid-sentence in her conversation about prenatal care programs, looked up just in time to see the woman approaching. Victor's face paled, but he didn't move, frozen, perhaps, by the thrill of the impending chaos or the fear of exposure. Isabella stopped directly in front of their table, her lips curling into a smirk that dripped with venom. Well, isn't this cozy? She purred, her voice loud enough to draw nearby heads. The dutiful wife and her devoted husband. How touching. But we all know the truth, don't we, Victor? Elena's cheeks flushed, but she held her composure, her free hand gripping the armrest of her chair. I beg your pardon. Do I know you? She asked, her tone steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. The baby kicked softly, as if sensing the unrest. Victor cleared his throat, stammering, Isabella, this isn't the place, but she cut him off with a laugh, sharp and mocking. Oh, but it is the place. Right here, in front of all your precious friends. You've been playing house with this breeder, while I've been the one keeping your bed warm. And now, look at her, parading around like some saintly Madonna. It's pathetic. The words hung in the air like smoke, and Elena felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She shifted in her seat, trying to stand, but Isabella was quicker. With a swift, deliberate motion fueled by jealousy and alcohol, she lunged forward and kicked the leg of Elena's chair. The ornate wooden piece toppled sideways with a crash, sending Elena tumbling to the floor. Gasps echoed through the room as Elena hit the carpeted ground, her hands instinctively cradling her belly. Pain shot through her side, but it was the fear for her unborn child that made her heart race. My baby! She cried out, tears welling in her eyes as she struggled to sit up. Victor, who had been watching the entire scene unfold, burst into laughter. It started as a nervous chuckle, then escalated into full-bellied guffaws that reverberated off the walls. Oh, come on, Elena, it's just a little spill, he said between fits, wiping a tear from his eye. Isabella's got spirit, that's why I love her fire. The crowd stared in horror, some murmuring in disgust, others pulling out their phones to capture the spectacle. Isabella, momentarily stunned by her own boldness, joined in the laughter, high-fiving Victor as if they'd just pulled off a prank. But Elena lay there, the wind knocked out of her, feeling the first twinges of contractions, too early, far too early. The laughter died as quickly as it had erupted when a sharp voice cut through the din. What the hell is going on here? It was Marcus Hale, a prominent attorney and Elena's longtime friend, who had been across the room bidding on artwork. He rushed over, kneeling beside her and helping her to a nearby couch. Call an ambulance. She's pregnant. Chaos ensued. Waitstaff scattered to fetch ice and water, guests formed a protective circle, and Victor's face finally registered the gravity of the situation. But it was too late for remorse. His amusement had sealed his fate in the eyes of everyone present. Isabella, realizing the enormity of her actions, tried to slip away, but the hotel's security was already on the scene, alerted by the commotion. Ma'am, you need to stay right here, a burly guard said, blocking her path. Elena, now propped up with pillows, winced as another pain gripped her. She assaulted me, kicked my chair while I'm pregnant. It hurts so much. Marcus nodded grimly, already dialing his contacts. I've got this, Elena. This woman's going down. Word spread like wildfire through the gala, and soon, the flashing lights of police cruisers pierced the night outside the hotel. Officers from the city's finest precinct arrived within minutes, their presence turning the elegant affair into a crime scene. Victor, sobering up to the reality, tried to intervene. Officers, this is all a misunderstanding. Isabella didn't mean any harm, it was just a joke gone wrong. But the cops weren't buying it. Witnesses, dozens of them, including video footage from attendees, phones, painted a clear picture, unprovoked aggression against a vulnerable woman. Isabella was handcuffed amid protests, her designer dress rumpling as she was led away. This is ridiculous. Victor, do something. She shrieked, but he stood there, his laughter long evaporated, looking more like a deer in headlights than a millionaire mogul. The officers read her rights: assault charges, potential endangerment of a fetus, and public intoxication to boot. Elena was whisked to the hospital in the ambulance, where doctors monitored her closely. Fortunately, the baby was stable, but the incident left her shaken, with bruises and emotional scars that would take time to heal. Back at the precinct, Isabella sat in a holding cell, her empire of seduction crumbling. Victor arrived with his high-powered lawyer, but even he couldn't spin this tale favorably. The media frenzy began almost immediately, headlines screaming, "Millionaire's mistress attacks pregnant wife at gala. Arrest shocks high society." Social media exploded with clips of the fall, Victor's cruel laughter dubbed over in memes that painted him as the villain he truly was. Elena, from her hospital bed, watched it all unfold, vowing silently that this would be the end of her marriage. Divorce papers were drawn up by morning, with Marcus ensuring she got everything she deserved: the house, custody, and a hefty settlement that would secure her and the children's future. As for Isabella, the charges stuck. Assault on a pregnant woman carried heavy penalties in the state, and with Victor's refusal to bail her out, citing irreparable damage to his reputation, She faced months in jail and a civil suit from Elena for medical costs and emotional distress. The millionaire, once the toast of the town, found his business partners distancing themselves, investors pulling out, and his carefully curated image in tatters. He spent the next weeks apologizing profusely, sending flowers to the hospital, but Elena's response was a single, curt text. Your laughter said it all. In the aftermath, the gala's host organization issued a statement condemning the violence, and Elena emerged as an unlikely hero, her story inspiring discussions on domestic abuse and the perils of infidelity in elite circles. She channeled her pain into advocacy, starting a foundation for women facing similar betrayals. Victor, humbled and alone, retreated to his penthouse, reflecting on how one night of unchecked indulgence had cost him everything. Isabella, from behind bars, penned regretful letters that went unanswered. And the baby, born healthy a month later, a tiny fighter named Hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, resilience prevails. But the story didn't end there. As Elena rebuilt her life, whispers of Victor's next scheme surfaced. He was plotting a comeback, perhaps with a new paramour, but the scars of that fateful kick lingered. The police investigation revealed more. Text messages between Victor and Isabella plotting the confrontation, emails of lavish payoffs to keep her quiet before. It turned out the joke was premeditated, escalating the charges to conspiracy. Isabella's trial became a media circus, with Elena testifying calmly about the terror of that fall, her voice steady as she described the laughter that echoed louder than any scream. Victor, subpoenaed as a witness, crumbled under cross-examination, admitting his complicity. I thought it was funny in the moment, he mumbled, but the jury saw through it. Fines, community service, and a restraining order followed for him, while Isabella served 6 months, emerging changed, or so she claimed in a tell-all interview that no one watched. Elena, thriving with her new support network, watched from afar, her chair, metaphorically, firmer than ever. The incident, born of jealousy and folly, became a cautionary tale. In the game of hearts and heels, no one wins when kicks replace kindness. Word count, 1024.